everybody. Welcome to the Black Film Space podcast. My name is Reggie Williams.
This is Londa Yusuf.
And we are the co-founders of Black Film Space. This is our first podcast, and we are interviewing Radha Blank. She was a writer for Empire and is currently a writer on She's Gotta Have It. And we are very excited to share this interview with you. Radha Blank, thank you for joining us on our very first podcast.
No intro music. I thought there'd be like a symphony or some.
We're not at that stage yet.
Okay,
yeah.
We're
right. Still
grassroots. Welcome.
We'll jump right in. Can you tell the audience about your path and how you became a screenwriter and producer?
Oh, that's such a great question. I've just always written. I was always a writer. I was raised by a cinephile, a Black woman who loved movies. And so there was always this, I was always encouraged to tell a story. I feel like the first time I told a story when I was like 8 years old about a Black family who had, was tired of all the games and the shenanigans here. Can we curse on this thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Tired of all the bullshit on Earth. And they had built a spaceship, and then they flew to a distant planet, but nobody else lived on the planet. And it was fine at first. They loved it. It was like, oh, wait, white people not bothering us? This is great. No pollution. But they eventually started feeling lonely and decided to fly back to Earth because they'd rather deal with a flawed humanity than.
Wow.
And my mom,
8 years old.
Yeah. And my mom,
really
like, her eyes were kind of,
yeah.
Well, I guess I just was writing a story because she always encouraged me to write, and she kind of had tears in her eyes, and I was just like, it's just a story. And the first thing she said was, oh my God, you see Black people in the future. That was the first thing she said. And then she said, you're going to be a great writer one day. And I was like, oh, she's just encouraging me, and that's cool. But I really feel like she planted the seed back then. So I then became like obsessed with story, like what it meant to write stories. And as I got older, I was like, there might be a profession in this. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I became a playwright first, and I became a playwright by default because, like everybody else in New York, I was trying to act, and I wasn't getting cast in anything, barely. I mean, I did play like a drug dealer in an industrial film. And if you can find that shit where I have on a Giants jersey and a Scully, and I'm like, yo, yeah, in the back. If you can find that, if someone can find that, let me know. But that was a film I got cast in. But I wasn't getting the roles that I wanted. Yeah. And so I wrote a solo show. And, again, I wasn't calling myself a playwright. I was 20. I wasn't calling myself a playwright. I just wanted to create a platform for myself as an actor. And so I did the play. It was called Kenya, about a basketball player. And people loved the acting, but they really loved the writing. And it kind of surprised me. It's like, oh, shit. Okay. And so that is what began my career. And where TV came in, it's so odd. Again, like I never sat down and said I want to be a TV writer. I felt like theater was where my voice rang the truest. That's what I thought at the time. And so I started writing all of these plays, and I'd gotten a Nickelodeon fellowship, but you find after a while transitioning from writing children's television to going to adult is almost impossible. Wow. So it was the plays that became my writing samples. People were writing specs at the time. And I think I got into writing for TV around the time where people were actually wanting more of an original voice, not just a spec script for Family Guy. And so I had these plays, and that's how I got every single TV writing job that I got was the plays. Not even even after writing episodes of TV, it wasn't the episodes of TV that got me the jobs. It was the plays. So
what do you think it is about plays that gives you the advantage as a writer for other mediums?
I just think playwrights are obsessed with character. We only have 2 hours. And so everything has to be revealed. There is no cliffhanger and tuning in next week. You really have to create an entire world and create a life and people feel that life in the 2 hours on stage. So I think when people hire playwrights, which is happening more and more, thank God, in the world of TV and film, you're going to get a writer who is like, wants to know why a person is doing what they're doing. And so it's become a viable place to work for playwrights. And, we're becoming more sought after, I think, for television and film. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I didn't know that playwrights were got those opportunities to that extent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In this She's Gotta Have It room alone, Lemon Anderson, myself, Issa Davis, Lynn Nottage, now this season, Jocelyn Bio, Antoinette Nwandu, all playwrights.
Wow.
How many people are in that writer's room? Because it's like a full one.
Yeah, no, it is. It's about 9 or 10 writers.
Yeah, the overwhelming majority of you
But
guys.
yeah, Tracy Scott Wilson. I mean, I could go on and on of all the different playwrights who are now working in TV, because showrunners want that person or those people who are going to ask those questions like, well, why is this coming from? Why, playwrights, I always say we're obsessed with earning an ending. So it's not enough to just, throw ideas on the board. I think we're always saying like, to what end? To what point? Mm-hmm. And so people are much more open to hiring us now,
Did you have any struggles making that transition from playwriting to TV writing?
Yes, I did. My first, again, I worked in children's television, and that, I wouldn't say that was easy for me, but it was easier because I worked with children for so many years. And so I became sought after for preschool television. And then I worked, it used to be called the N. Now I think it's Teen Nick.
Oh, I'm with Viacom.
Right.
Yeah.
And so because I worked with young people, and I guess people thought I captured their voices, I was able to make a way in that world. But I really wanted to do adult writing. And I think the thing that was challenging for me is after writing plays for 20 years, I know, I moisturized. After writing plays for 20 years, in the world of playwriting, a playwright might have a dramaturg working with them. And a dramaturg basically, they're invested in helping the playwright get to the truth of the play. So, they operate on different levels. There's the dramaturg who's doing all this research based on the world that you've created, and they want to help you authenticate the world there. Like if I was doing a play about construction workers, the dramaturg is going to go out and find out like union laws and, hiring practices and stuff like that. And then, typically what ethnic groups work in this world. The other side of it is the dramaturg, asked you very, very straight up questions about your intention, But the thing the dramaturg never does is solve the problem for you. TV is just the opposite. So in theater, they can ask me all these questions, but I'm the person who ultimately comes up with the solution. In TV, you don't ask questions. You come up with the solution. Mm-hmm. And that was a struggle for me in the beginning because I was so used to being like the playwright, this is my play, my vision. And when you go into a TV writing room, it really is, you're part of a super brain. And so you don't, if I'm writing a play, I might say, I don't really like how this character's coming off. You would never say that in the TV writing room because it's like, we don't have time to talk about what you don't like. Yeah. So instead of saying something like, I don't like how this character comes off, it's like, is it feasible if, we have him do X, Y, Z, that he'll come off it, it's really about strategic thinking and problem solving in TV. And I think I had to learn how to do that. I learned relatively quickly because, you after a while you're just like, oh, nobody else is stating what they don't like and how they feel. I mean, yes, we do talk about how we feel, honestly, because I think in some of the best writing rooms, people are being very transparent about their experiences as it relates to a certain character. But when you have a crunch time, we created season 2 of She's Gotta Have It. We were contracted for 14 weeks, but we probably wrote it in 12 because, Spike was in Cannes and all these other things come up. Yeah. People are off writing scripts, which is probably unprecedented. But, there's not a lot of time for people talking about, well, I don't like, it's really, we have to solve problems. So that was what I had to learn in the writing room.
What's the process like in a writer's room? Can you walk us through that?
Well, you know what? I have to say it's not the same in every writer's room.
Okay.
For the most part, though, everyone is trying to break story. Like, what are the most important elements for this episode of TV? And that's something we're all doing together. Like, I think I always want to demystify certain things. And one thing I want to demystify is this idea that when your name is on a script for a television show, that you wrote it alone. Yes, you did actually sit down at your typewriter and write it. But the arteries, like all of the things that are pumping into that script come from the room. Like each writer kind of is the, I guess, doula, helping the baby come to life. But the baby belongs to the room in a sense, like we all are kind of like pitching off of something and we're all chipping away at David, like trying to get closer to the beautiful figure or statue under the block of marble. So that's pretty much how every room works. It's like we're all kind of throwing our ideas in the pot and whatever the best idea is. And when I say best, I don't mean in terms of good or bad. It's just like whatever serves the story best. That's what we're sticking with and that's what we're moving forward. Like you don't go off and just do what you want, write what you want. You can write it in the way that you would like to, but for the most part, we're all kind of collectively creating this thing.
What's the difference, or was there a difference between writing for network television and writing for a streaming platform?
Yes. Network TV for me was grueling. Because generally we're talking about, in a season, I'm just speaking from my own experience of like working on Empire. It was like, I think by the time I came on to season 2, it was 20 something episodes as opposed to the 9 or 10 on the streaming services. Cause they know that people are going to binge. And for the most part, like how long can somebody sit down in a chair? Yeah, like it is different. And I think, network TV, there are corporate interests, and advertisers and, there has to be, a plot break at a certain point because it's time for a commercial break. And it's kind of written in that way. Whereas the digital platform, it almost feels like a play sometimes because it really is this uninterrupted thing. And I think that's why so many people are like creating on that platform now because you don't have to break the flow or anything like that. Mm-hmm.
Got it. And as far as the act structure, is it the same act structure for a streaming platform? Like, do you need those climaxes at the end of Act 1 and 2?
I think we pretty much stick to the same. I just think it might feel a little bit different. It's not as heightened because the whole idea is like, we want to make sure they come back after the commercial. So it may turn up a little bit higher for network TV, whereas someone's watching on a streaming, they can stop it, pause it whenever they want. But I don't think like we are writing with that in mind. It's more of a flow. If I would, it's more of a flow. Network TV is more structured, or someone might say more rigid, but it is more structured. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did you acquire an agent? How did you start getting into the rooms where people started to consider you for jobs? And how would you advise someone to do that?
It's funny. It's such an interesting question because I don't know that I acquired an agent. Like my story, I don't know how unique this is, but like I was walking down Broadway in 2014, 15. I can't remember when this was, and someone called me out from LA and they were like, hi, I'm such and such and such and such agency. And, the Get Down is looking for writers. And I submitted your name. And at that point, the person was like, trying to engage me as a client. Like, I put you through, I read one of your plays when I worked at another agency. I had met the person. They weren't a complete stranger.
That's really gangsta.
Yeah, no. No, I had met her before, but she had moved on, and she was like, "Listen, that play that you sent me, I submitted it for this thing, and it looks like they're interested in you." And so we started working together, and it was a great relationship for the time that I had it. At some point, it was time to move on because I just wasn't taking the meetings that I thought that I should. And I moved on to another agency because once you get on a show, you can take meetings, with agents from different reps from different agencies. And so that's kind of what happened with me is I was on Empire. No, I was on the Get Down. And by the time I moved to Empire, I realized it was time for me to move on. And so, once you have a credit and once you've been hired, you kind of have a little bit more flexibility around who you want to work with. But then I ended up at CAA because my manager, Jelani Johnson, what's up, Jay? He was my manager at the time and he was moving on to an agency. And at the time I was like, I just got where I got. But I knew that I was going to get a certain kind of treatment because we were so connected as manager and client. So he's been my agent for the last, I don't know how long. But yeah, I wish I had an answer to that question. I don't think that there's a particular formula. I think the way you get an agent is by writing your ass off. That's it. There's no other answer, really. You write your ass off. You get your work out there. Self-produce if you have to. Don't wait on... how did I get the Nickelodeon? How did I get to Nickelodeon? I applied for a fellowship. So apply to fellowships. Shoot your own shit. Don't wait on someone to, pick your script out of a pile because there are piles. But who's on the top of the pile are the people whose writing rises to the top. So I think worrying about an agent is something that should come secondary, thirdary to, is this good? And how do I know? Did I share it with an audience and did they get the vision? Like those things come first to me.
Speaking of good, how did you get better as a writer or improve your skills?
I aged. Aged.
What do you mean?
I'm a grown-ass woman who has a point of view. Like, nothing against millennial writers. Talent is where talent is. I just feel like for me personally, I needed a point of view. And to me, you kind of you have more of a point of view the longer you have been out in the world. And one time I was contemplating going to grad school, not because I wanted to learn how to write, because I actually don't think you can be taught. That's just my theory. But because I didn't have an agent and I wasn't getting any acting or writing jobs. And so I was like, well, if I get that stamp of approval from a Yale or a Brown or a Juilliard, then, I will probably get more eyes on my work. And I remember going to a convening with a bunch of MFA playwrights who were all in their 20s. These are people who are coming out of Yale and Juilliard and, Brown and stuff. And they were some of the most well-structured plays I'd ever seen. But they weren't about shit. And I think it's because most of the playwrights were like 22. And it's almost like, if I was running a program, a grad writing program, I would want the person to have some life experience. Like, don't come here right after college. Go out, live a little bit, travel the world, and then come back. And then let's talk about your writing.
That's really encouraging for people who feel aged out of the business.
Well, it's funny because my movie is called The 40-Year-Old Version, about, a woman who decides to salvage her career by becoming a rapper at 40 years old. And so this whole idea of age is funny. Like, I feel like I'm in a business where women are discouraged from sharing their age. I kind of have no choice because my movie's called The 40-Year-Old Version. But I think that there are all kinds of beliefs out there that are phantom. They're not real. Like, if you decide that that's your reality, then that is going to be your reality. But for me, if I were to accept that, then I guess I wouldn't be making my movie now. So, I really do feel like we're in a time now where it doesn't matter what status quo says, or who dictates what the mainstream. Like, you can pick up your iPhone, get a little mini tripod and shoot some shit and put it out there in the world and cultivate your audience on your own, at any age, because that's pretty much the point of my movie is like, you don't age out of your passions. Mm-hmm. And so if you decide at 35, you want to start something new, then do it, yeah.
Awesome. And as far as like how often you write, when you were coming up through the playwriting and up until now, like how often do you write?
Not much. And I know all the people who are studying and professors and shit, like, what are you talking about? I'm just being honest with you. Like, I don't write every day. I don't. Or rather, I don't sit down in front of my computer every day to write. Mm-hmm. I'm writing by walking right outside of comic strip life. Mm-hmm. Like writing for me happens in a conversation with somebody who is drunk, or, with the sweet homeless lady down the block. Like, like I when I was in my early 20s, I was dating a writer who was a little bit older than me. And, I'd wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I'd go to reach out for him and he wasn't there. He was at his desk in the corner writing until the wee hours. And so like I was the mistress and the writing was the wife. And I, eager to find my own flow and, my own way of writing, I imitated him for a while. I was like, oh, okay, I need to get up 4 or 5 o'clock because that's when the juices are flowing. And I went back and I read that stuff and it was all shit. It was terrible because it wasn't how I write.
Yeah.
Now, what does happen though is, because I do feel like a lot of my work is divinely inspired, what does happen is when the idea comes, I can't move. I'm a slave and servant of the idea. And my mom, God rest her soul, she would call me sometimes and she wouldn't get through it. She knew. She's like, oh God, I hope you're bathing and I hope you're eating, because like I'll be in front of the computer for 4 days.
Wow.
And then I won't. I mean, I have an extreme personality. But that's what works for me. I think everyone needs to figure out what it is they want to do and how they're going to do it. I see writing as a spiritual practice. And so, I have a play called Casket Sharp about a black man, an educated black man from the East, who goes down south to revive his dead father's funeral business. And he ends up, becoming the mediator between this mourning mother and her dead son's gang family. He mediates between the two of them over how this boy should be buried. And as research, I just researched gangs for like 2 months, like lived, smelled, breathed, ate, shat, gangs. And I was actually in a gang or two.
What?
Person in, yup.
Really?
That's how
I
you
won't say
became a
which
writer.
one.
Tell us about where you grew up. You grew up in
Brownsville.
Baltimore. You grew up in Brownsville,
I did not.
Brooklyn?
I'm not from Baltimore. I have a house there. I'm from New York.
Oh.
I'm a New Yorker.
Okay.
And I lived in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, most of my life. And then when we moved to Brownsville, I got in some cliques with young people. And so I've always been fascinated with that experience from the point of view who's been in it, and then also from the point of view of a person who was an educator for many years, working with young people who were in gangs. And so I had done the research on the gangs from my own personal life and then online and reading books and stuff. And I found I was having like physical reactions to the work I was doing. I was like sick. I was having nightmares, like night terrors and shit. When I sat down to write the play, I wrote it in 2 days.
How many pages?
It's like 100 pages or something like that.
Wow.
But again, like to me, it was about being a vessel, being open, and just allowing all the information I took, but also the inspiration that was there to dictate what the story would be. I mean, I wrote an outline too. Like I had an outline, and then I went and filled in, and it took me 2 days. And what's interesting is I didn't write that many drafts of that play. But why was I talking about that play? Shit.
You talked about your writing. You were talking about your writing process.
Oh, yeah. Like I guess it's different for everybody. But for me, because I see it as a spiritual practice, like sometimes I'm like, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. I don't feel like it. But when it's there, I do answer it. And when it's not, I don't. I don't force anything. You know, I don't believe in that. That's just my personal credo, you know.
You made a few comments about like shit or bad writing. What do you consider to be bad writing? Specifically scripts.
Just anything that's not honest. You know, anything that's not honest. You know, and bad writing is not a bad thing. I mean, I think even bad writing can inspire you. You see a movie and you're like, what the fuck? I'm going home to write some pages because if that could get done, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. I just, anything that doesn't feel honest to me, that doesn't feel authentic or feels like contrived is bad writing. And so that's not necessarily saying that the characters aren't interesting or blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I'm like, but I have this thing now where it's like, if something feels really bad, I think I'm going to remove myself because my theory is I could sit in something for 2 hours, something really bad for 2 hours, and go outside and get hit by a Mack truck and then be dead. And the last 2 hours of my life was in a really shitty ass play or movie. So if I get that inkling that like, oh, this is going to be bad and I know it, I'll just leave. Wow. Yeah. Cause it's just life is too short. Mm-hmm. Like that's 2 hours of my life.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to be haunted by that terrible piece of shit. Like I'm trying to talk to somebody. I see somebody queued across the room and then I flash at that play. I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? So it's like, to me, like I have to protect what I'm consuming, you know?
So do you agree with the theory that people should watch bad stuff to get better?
Yeah, I think people should just watch everything.
Yeah.
You know? And it's funny, like this idea of better. It's like, I don't know what better is. I just know what honest is. Like honest. Whether it's comedy, drama, sci-fi, like what is honest? What's authentic? You know?
What's the last thing that you watched that you felt like was really honest?
You know what? I gotta go back to Sidney Lumet. Like he's my hero. A lot of my filmmaking heroes just happen to be dead white men. And hopefully, you know, we can do something about that. But the last thing I saw was a documentary on his filmmaking. And I look up to him so much because he's a New Yorker. And, you know, New York is like, we don't mince words. And he said that towards the end of the film that, you know, people were like, hey, Sidney, like you do these films, they're all so disparate. Like this one's about that. You did The Wiz, 12 Angry Men, blah, blah, blah. There's no through line in your through line theme. And he's like, that's not true. You know, that the theme of his work is like the rebel, the person who's going to stand against the grain, whether it's Serpico or Henry Fonda in 12 Angry Men, you know, like, yeah, that really made me hungry to make film and make film from that point of view. It's like just unflinching, you know, unapologetic film.
What about TV?
Okay. The last piece of TV that I saw that was honest, and I guess I can only speak from a personal point of view, it was an episode of Atlanta where Paperboy, was wandering through a forest.
Oh, that was an awesome episode.
And Brian, who plays Paperboy, is a good friend of mine. And what people may not know is that he lost his mother very early on. Like, I think he got the part and lost his mom maybe 2 weeks later or something like that. So he's someone who we've kind of communicated around losing our moms. And I had never seen a TV show or any kind of storytelling that absolutely reflected what it feels like to lose your mother. His character was wandering through a forest through the whole episode, and that's exactly what it feels like. And I just was so touched by it. I mean, Atlanta is one of those shows that, you know, I was on Empire when that pilot was moving around, and like there's just kind of this unspoken rule: you don't leave a show for another show because it's just not smart to do. But trust, I was tempted because it's much more my voice than Empire is. Like, but you know, I'm at the point now where the show is so good, I don't want to write for it because it's just nice to be a TV writer and sit back and be surprised by something. Mm-hmm. You know, from that episode to the episode with the invisible car, like, you know, they just surprised me. And it's just nice to be surprised by something, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about writer's assistants and your experience working with them? And is that a good path to becoming a television writer?
Sure. It's a viable path. It's becoming more and more competitive because there was a time when, you know, a person would come in as a PA and a writer's assistant because they were just hungry to do it. And, you know, they were young upstart. Now a PA and a writer's assistant are people coming out of UCLA. So it's become very competitive. It's a great place to start. But to me, nothing beats the writing. It's like, I didn't start as a writing assistant. I just watched a lot of TV, a lot of films. I used to go to the Lincoln Center archive. You know, say a play was on Broadway and the tickets were $150. I couldn't afford it. The minute it closes, an archive of it is in the... So it's just like, I feel like there are other ways, and the way that you get in, if you don't go through the academic route, is writing your ass off.
Yeah. Write.
Apply to programs, you know, work on films, and then self-produce. I'm telling you, because the PA, Taufik, what's up, Tao, on Empire, I just knew there was something about this guy, and I was just like, what do you do when you're not in here? And he showed me a film. This is our PA, not the writing assistant. He showed me one of the most profound films that I've seen in a long time. It's short. And now he is staffed on Atlanta.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
The cream rises to the top. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he got a writing assistant job on just because he was a PA on an Empire. I think they saw his work. They felt his voice. And that's what I think people need to do, is take the time to learn what your voice is. Like, fuck what other people are doing. Get off of Instagram, because Instagram gonna make you depressed, because you're gonna see some wonderkind on there who's 19 and now they're a showrunner on their own show. Like, get off of Instagram and get back to your voice. Do whatever it is you think you need to do. Travel, you know. And I just want to say something about mentorship, because people are always asking me to be their mentor. And my thing is, there's no better mentor than yourself, because you know what it is that you need. You know, I think we go to panels and we go to talkbacks and stuff, and we rush up to that person the way I did to Lynn Nottage and other people years ago, expecting them to give you the golden nugget. And they can give you the golden nugget, but, you know, it's their golden nugget. And what happens when you drop it and and it falls in the middle, a million pieces? Like, you have to be able to pick yourself up and mentor yourself. Like, what is it that I need? What's the kind of voice I think I might want to have in this world? Okay, well, who are the writers who write in that way? You can actually create your own mentor, your own virtual mentor by, you know, I mean, Sidney Lumet is my mentor. I've never met the man. He is dead. Mm-hmm. You know, so technically, unless we're having a seance, you know, but I watch his films because I feel like as a native New Yorker, even though I'm not, where film is concerned, I'm probably in a little bit more of a dramedy place. You know, I'm not writing the stories he's telling, but I love the way he tells those stories. So I'm studying him. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. And what about spec scripts? You talked about that earlier. Are those dead? Is it pointless now?
You know what? I got into this with somebody about a month ago, and she has like a young niece who's coming up in the business, and she's like, actually, it was Karen Horn. Hey, Karen at NBC, who used to run the Nickelodeon Writing Fellowship that I applied for and got. She was saying, like, to her niece, like, yeah, you know, you got to write that great spec script. And I was telling her niece, no, you got to write that great original pilot. And she was like, oh, no, you know, they still want the spec script out there. And I was like, well, but if you have that original pilot, like, that's going a step further. And so I'm not quite sure what the rule is right now. I just know a lot of writers who are getting staffed in rooms off of original pilots.
So if somebody has a pilot and they don't have a lot of connections in the industry, or their connections are basically their peers, what do they do with that pilot?
Shoot it. That's it.
And then what?
Put it online. Issa Rae, Issa motherfucking Rae. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's just that simple. You really want to cultivate an audience. You really want to get eyes, because that's what matters now. Is like, you look at a singer like Jill Scott. She may have been like a treat and a new artist to the industry, but she was cultivating her audience the whole time. You know, like, she put albums out. You didn't even know what the girl looked like. You just said, who's this Jill Scott? She has this amazing voice, and I love her song. Like, she had Philly unlocked. And that's my thing. It's like, get your local scene up. You know, befriend the actors in your neighborhood. I mean, like, there are very few Black actors that I don't know, and they don't know me. Because in New York theater, you know, like, it's a small community. It's a growing community, but everyone kind of knows each other. And I think Black actors are always looking for material. They want to know who the new voices are. You know, everybody, August Wilson, God bless you, you know, but I think actors are trying to build a repertoire. They want to be able to play urban characters, classical characters, August Wilson characters, and they want to play contemporary characters. So, you know, I'm like, write that shit and shoot that shit. And then put it online and see what happens. Because if the audience is there, then you've already jumped 10 hurdles. You didn't have to necessarily do the writing assistant, the this, the that, the that. You know, I'm not saying it's going to happen that way for every single person who puts their stuff online. But if you want to find out if some shit works, put it online.
Okay, we got into debate, Reggie and I, about my reluctance to apply to festivals because I was considering what you just suggested. What do you think about content creators that rely on the festival infrastructure?
I don't think you should rely on anything. You shouldn't rely on anything. You shouldn't rely on your academic training. You shouldn't rely on your mentorship. You shouldn't rely on festivals, but you should try everything. The Black Star Film Festival. Hey, Maori Holmes is the founder. It's been going strong for the last 5 or 6 years. We also call it the Black Family Reunion because it's someplace, even when I worked in LA, I flew back to Philly because I needed some East Coast energy. I don't know if anybody's ever worked in LA.
I want to ask you about LA. We'll talk about that.
But, you know, what I love about festivals like Black Star is like, that's where you cultivate audience. Why wouldn't I do a festival so I can see the impact and I can decide and say, yeah, I think this is my audience. So that when it's time to do marketing for the film, I know what people are laughing at, or people in Philly or whatever the festival is, people locally are buzzing about it. So that when it gets on a bigger platform, you've already got this place on lock. Of course, do festivals. Absolutely do festivals. But don't rely on festivals. So you should try everything, but not rely on anything. You got to be a master curator, and you have to put all the pieces together that are going to work for you, you know?
how do you manage to have a career in New York and shuffling back from Baltimore? Because everyone insists on moving to LA. LA is where you need to be.
LA's not for me, not to live. I tried it for 2.5 years. It's not for me, but I love visiting. I love going for 10 days, 2 weeks. And if you're fortunate enough, you will be going out there to pitch on stuff, and that's a blessing. So thank you, LA, for that. I love California. So like Pasadena, Glendale, hey Joy, I think if I lived in California and maybe commuted, but LA is just not for me. And I'm not hating on y'all. Lena, Ben, all y'all, I'm not hating on LA. Don't come for me. Okay. I'm just saying that I'm really an East Coast girl, and that's where I think I thrive. It feeds my voice as a writer,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you feel about Black representation in 2018?
Oh my God. How do I feel about it? If you were to scroll through my Instagram, Black representation looks awesome because I curated that based on whether it's film collectives or filmmakers or singers. I follow drag queens. It's well, damn, we are really doing it, but it's a microcosm. In reality, there needs to be more of it. There needs to be more. I mean, there was a panel recently, and this speaks to Black representation and female representation, that I think the WGA put on. Maybe it wasn't the WGA. I'm sorry, WGA. I don't want to blame you. But there was a panel on comedy writing, and it was predominantly white men. And I'm like, wow. So, even if there are more of us out there, people are not including us in those major conversations. So, yes, we are making great strides. Charles King, Will and Jada and Jamal at Overbrook, Black folks are now behind the camera and producing more, giving writers opportunities. But I mean, it's still a drop in the bucket. We can't let Instagram or how lit the BET Awards is, we can't let that distract us from the reality that, in our government, with this woman, Sarah, who, these two Sarahs that are going for the seat in Georgia, am I right? In Congress, Senate.
We're too busy. We don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
But it's the first time a Black woman is running for that office. I mean, Instagram may look one way, but in reality, we're still underrepresented in the world. So naturally, film is experiencing that too. So yeah.
And how do you feel about Netflix's strong Black lead? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was great. I mean, it could have been. There seemed like there could have been more people up there, but I think it's great. I think they paid homage to that infamous portrait in Harlem many years ago. I think it's a great campaign, but it's a campaign. They're selling something. So, it's a viral campaign. A lot of the people in the photographs were actors. I wish there were as many content creators in that photo, so that it's not just Ava and Cheo and Lena, and Justin, but every single person that was represented was actually creating content on the network. That would really fucking impress me.
Mm-hmm.
But, baby steps.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see represented via a Black character?
Well, I'm going to take the time because I know we're winding down to plug my soon-to-be movie, the 40-year-old version. Like I said, I'm a cinephile raised on New York filmmakers. And, I love Schmutty Schmalin movies. You can't say the name anymore. So I love Schmoody Schmelin. I love the movie. I don't love him. I'm sorry. I love those movies. And, but I've never seen myself in them. And, you know, as much as Spike is, you know, a forefather of Black filmmaking, I haven't seen myself in his films either. So I can't just rely on that as a source. So I'm just going to create that shit myself. Because, you know, the reason Lena Dunham had a series was because she had a film where she placed someone who looked and felt like her with her body and her, you know, whatever type in the lead. And so I feel like that's the only way things are going to change is when we start to insert, you know, our version of diversity. I really hate that word, but variety. And, you know, when people see that there might be an audience for it, they'll catch on. But we can't wait on that. Again, we can't wait. We just have to put it out there. So I want to see more movies or more films or representation of Black women of different body types, of different skin tones, of different, you know, with crooked teeth and not so aquiline and not so perfectly beautiful. Like, I mean, that's why I think people watch the BBC programming, because people on there look real. And you know that those people weren't hired simply because they were gorgeous. They, you know, they take their storytelling very seriously. And I'm just trying to think if there's a show with a lead that is not a typical beauty. I don't want to say it because then now it looks like I'm calling somebody ugly.
Chewing gum. Chewing gum is
absolutely.
Is great.
Yeah. Oh my God. But again, that was a BBC show.
Some people say Insecure, but I think they're both really pretty.
Oh, they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous. But I mean, they're still chocolate sisters. Yeah. And when the fact that the lead and her co-lead are chocolate women, it's like when usually they would throw in, you know, one of my Redbone sisters as her very best friend.
They tried.
Did they?
Yeah, they tried to make her biracial.
To make
Issa's character.
You know, these motherfuckers, excuse my French, they will try that shit. I pitched once for a network, I won't say what, but there was an RFP and they were looking for, you know, which is a request for proposals, which is like pitches for shows. And they wanted a show with a teenage Black lead. And so I wrote this show called My Life is a Joke about a Black girl who decides not to go to college, but to become a stand-up comic. And they really liked it. They really, really liked it. And about 5 months into the process, they sat me down and they were like, does she have to be Black?
What?
And yeah. What? Yeah. What? Come on, y'all.
I know.
I mean, you know, they tried it. But now that we're doing numbers,
right,
it's a different story.
Right.
So y'all better write your stories and get them out there because it looks like we're in. I don't know how long that's going to last, but like
the word diverse is like a buzzword.
Oh, everyone's trying to get diverse. And just one last thing. I remember, you know, first starting out in the business and pitching shows about like Black creatives and people at different networks being like, no one really wants to see a show about an artist, you know. Like that's not an exciting, you know. They want like someone who's working in a hospital or this or that. Then Atlanta came out, and when I say, and God bless all you wonderful development people and executives, but when I say, yeah, we want something like Atlanta. I mean, I've heard that a million times. It's like, oh, but see, so you can't let what Main Street does or doesn't do dictate what moves you're making. Yeah, you should look at the trends because a trend might actually serve you. Like I said, we're in right now, but you can't let that stop you from your vision. I've pitched this movie as a web series, a 30-minute pilot, a million times, and you know, ultimately, I started getting support for the film when I just decided to do it my damn self. So. You know, I'm working with Tash Mosley, who's a very good friend of mine from LA, and Jamal Watson at Overbrook, and Miss Octavia Spencer. And we're going to make this movie, you know, like.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. But, you know, the thing is you working in TV can be very fulfilling. But when you're of a mindset of an artist and you have a specific vision, it doesn't matter how long the work is and how long the check is. Like, you ultimately have to step out and kind of carve your own path with your storytelling. So, that's my goal. It's like, I feel very, very fortunate to get the work that I've gotten as a TV writer, and I will continue to work in TV, but there's just this thing that's gnawing at you if you don't. And I kind of compare it to a singer who's had songs written for them many years, and then ultimately like, no, I have to write the song. I have to do it. So that's what I'm doing, and we start shooting in August, and pray for me.
Well, I'm sure it'll be great. Thank you so much, Radha. We know you have to get out of here, but thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah,
And how can people follow you?
Yeah.
Radha Miss Prime on Instagram. That's it.
Thank you.
On there. Yeah, thanks. And best of luck to you guys. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, y'all. It's Londe. Thanks for tuning in again to our very first podcast with Radha. Shout out to Radha. Make sure you follow us at www.blackfilmspace.com and also on Instagram and Facebook at Black Film Space. And we also should fill you in on some of our future events. We have one coming up on July 22nd. It's a Sunday. It's our 3rd annual Summer Mixer. We have it every year, and it's a dope-ass day party. Your ticket basically grants you admission to unlimited food and drink, not to mention networking opportunities. And to paint a picture, we essentially were swag surfing last year. So you're going to have a great time if you come through. Definitely sign up for this. BFS Summer Mixer 2018.eventbrite.com is where you can get your tickets.
And it's at Weeksville.
Yes, which is a great historical site.
Yeah, it's an amazing venue.
So see you there. And again, until next time, we can't wait to give you another interview. Peace.
Bye.